Hey everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. I hope everyone's doing well tonight. It's good to see you. I still see we've got a few people kind of popping in, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and keep moving forward. So I wanted to share with you something that I thought those of you who work with early elementary students, like grades kinder, first, second, might appreciate. So I have two granddaughters. Riley is the oldest. She's 10 in the 5th grade, going on 30. Then we have Madeline, who is the youngest. She's 5 and she's in 1st grade. Well, tomorrow is her birthday, and she's so excited that she's going to be turning 6. Well, this child's life is, she has a great life. I mean, she has a loving family, supportive family, great teacher, great school, all that good stuff. But her favorite thing in the world is to eat. She absolutely loves food. So when you ask her, what do you want for your birthday? She will tell you all the foods that she likes. So tomorrow for her birthday dinner, when we were asking her where she wanted to go, she has decided that we need to do a restaurant tour. So we need to start first at Johnny's Pizza, where she can get her favorite pizza. Then we need to go to Five Guys so she can have a hot dog because she loves their hot dogs. And then we need to finish up at Nikki's Mexican restaurant where she can have her favorite chips and queso. And then of course we have to have dessert. So she wants us now to go to Marilyn's place and get beignets. And then finally back to their house where we can have cake and ice cream. So she's really upset with her mom and dad, who both said, it is a school night. We do not have time to go to 4 different places for you to have all your favorite foods, but we will try to do that for her this weekend. So anyway, sort of atypical little girl in 1st grade, but it's all about food. So thank you to those of you that work with that age group because she's trying my patience right now with all of her birthday demands. And you know, not to mention, we're taking her to Dallas Saturday to the American Girl store, and we're going to have, you know, their little tea luncheon thing that they do. I mean, we've like gone all out for this birthday. But unless we do the restaurant tour, she's just not going to be happy. So, like I said, God bless you, and hats off to those of you that work with that age group, because I'm not ready to tell her, if you keep asking for stuff, we're not going to even celebrate your birthday, which, you know, would not be the nicest thing to do. So tonight what we're going to try to do is I want to just kind of walk through with you, sorry, I can't speak tonight, just some information about the Module 3 discussion forum and give you a little bit of feedback on the reflective essay since I've now graded everybody's. We'll talk for a few minutes about the week 4, which is open, assignments, which is your case study number 2 and the midterm. And then from there, just a quick update about Turnitin, and then finally we'll kind of walk through the PowerPoint tonight. So I hope none of you are, if you are, you're probably not with us because you probably don't have electricity or Wi-Fi, but I hope nobody is in an area that's being impacted by Hurricane Sally. You know, if you are, you know, you guys need extra help, support, time, whatever. And the same thing's true for our family and friends that are down in South Louisiana that are still trying to recover from Hurricane Laura. So our thoughts and prayers are with you, but if you need anything at all, you know, just, you can text me. You guys have my cell phone number or email me or whatever. But let's talk for just a second. So you know, I have said for a long time that I firmly believe that Moodle hates me. It's like it has a vendetta against me, but this weird thing happened. Let me go back to week 3 and let's share my screen with you guys this week. So I opened up week 3. I thought everything was fine, and it was, because people started to respond to the discussion forum and all that kind of stuff. So let me share my screen here. I gotta get back to Zoom to do this. Where is share screen? Share screen. Okay. And y'all are gonna. This is really kind of funny. If it weren't so frustrating to me, I would probably laugh and cry at the same time. So anyway, I posted everything. Here's the discussion forum. Think everything is fine. Well, on Monday, I got somebody emailed me and said, where do I find the discussion forum? So lo and behold, I go into Moodle and the discussion forum has disappeared. It's not even there. So trying to be Johnny on the spot, I added it back. And I couldn't see this discussion forum at all in Moodle. But now when I log in to show y'all this, now I can see both of them. So I don't know what is going on with Moodle and this. You can respond to either discussion forum that you choose. The questions are pretty similar. They're just a slight bit different. It doesn't matter, but since I can now see both of them, I can also grade both of them. So it's fine. If you do this one, if you've already done it, you're good. Don't worry about it. If you want to do this one, that's fine too. My only thing to remind you is you don't have to do both, okay? So like I said, I'm not going to take them down. I thought about that, but then it'll mess up those people that have already done one of the forums. It'll mess up the grade. So I'm going to leave them. So you choose which one you want because Moodle hates me. So let's go on and move to, also I wanted to remind you guys with Turnitin. So Turnitin, typically you have to, what I say is submit twice. So you'll go in, upload your assignment, you'll hit submit, then you'll get a percentage from Turnitin. If your percentage is higher than 15%, you can, you're not required to, but you can go in and edit your submission. Remember, Turnitin is checking for plagiarism. Well, we've complained a lot about the fact that you have to hit submit, or you used to submit twice in Turnitin. So they have fixed that, which is exciting. I'm very happy. So once you hit submit, if your Turnitin percentage is fine, you're done. Don't worry about it. You don't have to go in and do another submission. If you decide to edit, you'll have to, you know, take whatever your assignment is, do whatever you're going to do to it, and then resubmit it. And if you run into problems, just email me directly. But I think they've actually fixed the issues with Turnitin, so it should be easier. And some of you have told me that I'm the only professor they've ever had in MEDCI or MEDL that uses Turnitin, which I think is kind of funny. Because technically, I teach in ed leadership and curriculum and instruction and handle all of the urban ed stuff. It was actually a program I created for LSUS. But I work in a college of business. And so in the college of business, gosh, I don't know a professor who doesn't use it. So anyway, that's that. Okay, and remember too, your case study number 1 is due this coming Sunday night, September 27th. Make sure you get it in if you can by 11:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, because the system will lock you out. If they do nightly maintenance from 11:30 p.m. to 12. So if you submit during that time frame, oftentimes your submission won't go through. So if you need to be late on it, it's no big deal. Just communicate with me and let me know what's going on. Let's look real quickly at
Dr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I had a question. When I turned in that reflective essay, it had Turnitin, but it said it was queued. It didn't give me a percentage, and I don't know. Did you get it?
Yeah, I did get it. Yeah, so I think everything was fine. Honestly, Willie, if for some reason I don't get a submission from you guys, when I go in and grade, I record as 0, but I always put in the notes, your no submission. Please email me so we can figure this out. So if you didn't get that email message from me, you're fine.
So when you turn it in, is it unusual to get that queued message? I mean, is that feedback immediate for those of you who've done it? Do you get that, percentage, as soon as you turn it in, or is it something where you had to wait? Because I almost felt like they were going to like email me something or whatever.
Yeah, does somebody want to respond?
Excuse me, mine said queued as well, and then I did get an email not too long after that with the code verifying like, oh, your paper's been turned in. And then I went back to check just to make sure, and then my percentage popped up.
Okay, you went back to check in the submission area?
Yes, where I submitted my assignment, maybe like the next day, just to check everything through.
Okay, yeah, I didn't do that. I checked it maybe 30 minutes later, and it still said queued. So, okay, thank you, Ebony.
Thanks, Ebony. Yeah, Ebony's correct, and a lot of it depends on when you're submitting. So, like if you are submitting during the week when not a lot of people are, it'll move a little bit faster. But if you're waiting and submitting, like a lot of people do their submissions on Saturday in our class, it sometimes will slow down as a result of that. But 99% of the time, I mean, it's pretty rare that I don't get the submission. And if I do, like I said, I'll let you know. And because, you know, I know deadlines are important, but I also understand, you know, we're in a pandemic. We've had 2 hurricanes in Louisiana and you know, southern part of the United States. And you guys are teaching in one of the most challenging years and environments that we've ever had. So I'm not going to, you know, if you don't get it turned in, don't freak out. It's no big deal. You don't have to text me at 1:30 a.m. like one of my undergraduate students did the other day. It's really all good. I won't penalize you. Okay, so I've decided some of my undergrad students are kind of like, you know how kids think that as teachers and principals and stuff, you just live at school. You don't really ever leave the school. And if they see you out in public, they're like blown away that you actually have a life. I've decided my undergrad students are very much the same way. I think they think that I am on the computer 24/7, and that is literally all I do. I also think sometimes too, they think that I'm one of those, what is it, artificial intelligent robots or whatever, because I don't have a chat feature that's going to, you know, keep giving you answers. I'm a real life person, so come on, guys, give me a break. Okay, so anyway, in week 4, you have a reflection question again, because remember in weeks 1, 3, and 5, we do discussion forums. In weeks 2, 4, and 6, we do reflections. Week 7, the only thing you're going to do is going to be your final exam. So let's look real quick. You know, once you kind of get through case study number 1, I think case study number 2, which is also the midterm, it's pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to pull this up. Oh, of course it's time. Sorry. 1 second. Remember my password, it would help. Sorry, it's being really slow today. Okay, now I gotta go to the course. Okay. Oh, and it doesn't show my editing stuff too, so this will look a little cleaner for you guys. Okay, so anyway, when you do the midterm exam, there are the directions and the worksheet that you're going to do. Now, a lot of people have said it's confusing that you post things twice. I post them in Word, but I also do it in PDF because we have a lot of Apple users that it's easier for them to access the PDF than it is the Word document. That's why I do both. But for the purposes of, you know, kind of walking you through the assignment, we're going to look at the Word document. Okay, so here's what you're going to do as part of the case study. So you're going to create a vision and mission for your urban school or system, okay? It can be the one you work in. It can be the one that you've decided you're going to use for the 3 case studies. You're also going to look at and develop 3 goals. So you can use SMART goals that you developed in case study number 1 here as well. So if you don't understand or know the difference between a vision, a mission, and the goals, which by the way, I talk about extensively and teach you in EDL 700, a simple Google search, and my favorite person who I think explains in terms of research, the differences between vision and mission is Rick Dufour. And so I'll write his name for you guys here in a minute in the chat, but it's Rick D-U-F-O-U-R, Rick Dufour. He is the father of PLCs and a lot of this kind of work, so he's fabulous. Okay, then in part 2, so your vision should be that big overarching goal. Your mission should be more specific and give information about how you're going to accomplish the vision. So vision statements will usually be things like to ensure that all graduates of Johnson High School are able to secure, I don't know, gainful employment. The mission is going to talk about that vision, but give more information specifically about how you're going to get there. Then your goals are basically come from the mission directly, okay? Google search, you'll see tons and tons and tons of information on it. And like I said, it's pretty easy. Now, if you are using a school system for your school, they should already have a vision, a mission, and goal statement. You are welcome to simply copy and paste those here. If your school or school system does not have a vision, mission, or goals, you got a whole other world of problems going on. But like I said, 99% plus of schools and districts have vision, mission, and goal statement. I know in some states it's required. It's part of their district improvement planning process. Okay, in part 2, you're going to write 3 goals. So 1 vision statement, 1 mission statement, 3 goal statements. So for each one of those goals, you're going to write 3 objectives. So again, you're starting broadly with a vision, a little more specific with mission, very specific with goals, and then extremely specific with objectives. So under each goal, there should be 3 objectives. And objectives will be things like, students will be able to, students will be able to write a comprehensive 3-paragraph essay using thesis statements and supporting details with 90% accuracy, okay? Super, super specific, okay? Now, honestly, when you have goals, like for a whole district, the objectives, there's usually generally way more than 3, but I'm only going to ask you to do 3, okay? And again, different schools and districts and parishes may have a different format for their objectives. I have special ed background and I've taught goals and objective setting 1,000 million times. So in my mind, it's always a student will be able to, do what, how, with what percent accuracy. Okay. Then part 3. So we're going to borrow a little bit from business because I think one of the things that we failed pretty miserably at, especially in urban schools and communities, is messaging. So you know how when charter schools started to really begin to proliferate and things like that, you saw a lot of marketing. So for example, I still see on TV all the time ads for Connections Academy, which is 100% virtual school. It's open to any child in the United States, free of charge. So they have a lot of messaging. They actually do advertising. We in the public school system have never felt like we needed to do that. But in reality, if you're not telling your story, nobody's telling your story. Or they're going to make up your story for you. So we're going to borrow from business marketing and we're going to do a message. So this is what I call my 1-minute elevator speech about your school or system. So I have mine memorized from when I was the principal at Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts in Dallas. So my elevator speech is, Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts is a school specially designed for students who have aptitude and interest in one of the performing or visual arts. The school houses approximately 900 students, and they come from very diverse backgrounds from across the entire Dallas Independent School District and DFW area. Students are able to learn intensely and participate in specific courses in dance, music, visual arts, or theater. I won't bore you with the rest, but I have my 1-minute sort of elevator speech. And it may sound corny and dumb, but I cannot tell you how many times working in Dallas ISD, even like at the, I don't know, I think the one that got me the most was I was at the eye doctor. And he asked me what I did. And I said, I'm the principal of, and Booker T. Washington. And he's like, and I get the, oh, not the like, oh, wow, that's awesome. It's the, oh. So I felt compelled to give him my 1-minute elevator speech, which told him that all of our students graduated from high school, regardless of their poverty index. And our average SAT and ACT scores exceeded not only the district average, the state average, but the national average. And that 90% of our students were able to graduate college ready, which is an even higher standard on the ACT and SAT. Elevator speeches can be very, very powerful. So as you're putting this together, think about what you want others to know about your school. What are the accomplishments? What are maybe some of the barriers or needs, especially if you're out there trying to fundraise or get support or whatever. and then talk about how others can get involved and help. And I will honestly say, many times after my little elevator speech, people were like, oh, wow, that's really interesting that y'all do that. I would like to. So for example, when we did our parent education nights, all of our speakers were free. So I had free people from the IRS helping them with taxes. I had people from SMU coming and showing parents how to do the FAFSA. All kinds of great individuals that this elevator speech sparked an interest. So think about that as you're planning. Okay, number 4. So this is the call to action or desired outcomes. So what is your overarching desired outcome? And again, that goes back to vision. So I think the easiest way to do it is, what would a successful student or graduate of your school be able to know and do? So as a high school principal, we talked about what it is when we send out a graduate, what do we want them to know and be able to do? So things like to be able to write on demand. Okay, so whether it's a letter, a resume, an email, or formal paper, we wanted them to be able to write on demand. We wanted them to be able to speak intelligently and to have strong oral communication skills, okay, that kind of stuff. As a middle school principal, we did the same thing. So when a student left us in the 8th grade, we wanted them to be able to know how to study and manage their time, how to resolve conflict in positive ways, that kind of stuff. Same thing as an elementary principal. So when our 5th graders left us to go off to middle school, we wanted them to be able to read on grade level and have numeracy skills that would allow them to be successful in more advanced mathematics courses, etc. Okay? So this doesn't have to be a paragraph. It can just be a bulleted list. And I'm only asking you for 5. Okay? Now, I will tell you, in reality, when I've done this in the past as a principal, ours was always a 1-pager. Because if you do more than 1 page, people lose interest. But for this, bulleted points, not a paragraph, just 5. Okay? Then part 5, so a pull-through offer. A lot of people don't know what that really is. It's a term used in business marketing, and it talks about the promotional efforts of a company to attract buyers, their marketing plan, manufacturers, etc. So they will also talk about a push-through offer. So here's an example. So if you're doing a pull-through offer, how will we get customers to pull through our doors and make offers on our products and service? That's how the lingo pull-through offer came about. So this can be something like advertising, referrals, etc. So in the education system, how are you going to hook people to get them involved in their school or system? So what methods are you going to use? So give me 3 to 5 strategies, and again, a bulleted list, and how you're going to do this. So you may do, for example, I know at Booker T. Washington, we decided to go through an entire branding process. I was very fortunate. I convinced the president of the Richards Group. If you don't know what the Richards Group is, they're the largest advertising agency in the country. And they always do like these massive Super Bowl ads like for Doritos and stuff like that. Well, I happened to hook him. I don't even know how still I did that, but anyway. And so he gave us 2 of these people who worked with us for 6 weeks. We would meet on Saturday mornings from like 8 to 12. And we went through an entire branding process and branded the school. Really powerful because we had marketing people who knew what they were doing and gave us like a tagline and a motto, a new logo, all that kind of stuff. So that's one option. You may decide to start a social media campaign through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you want to use. It could be that you're going to meet with the pastors in your community and see if you can have a few minutes maybe to speak at one of their events. There's a million different ways that you can do this. So just think about your situation and what you think is going to be the most powerful. Another example, a friend of mine who's a principal, most of her students live in apartments. So she went to all the apartment managers and they did like a family night at the apartment. and she was able to post information on their bulletin boards, put flyers on doors, whatever. So anything, you know, there's not a right or wrong to this. It's just what you think is going to be best. Okay. So once this is all done, you're going to do just like you do with case study number 1, and you're going to copy and paste your responses into the action plan template that you have from week 3, anywhere it says case study number 2. And like I said, very simple copy and paste. The only thing you're going to turn into me though is the worksheet, okay? Because remember, as part of your final exam, you're going to do case study number 3, which will finish out that action plan, and you'll submit case study number 3 and your completed action plan for your final exam grade. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns? Clear as mud. Okay, hopefully it makes sense. Once you go in, if you have any problems or questions, you know, just shoot me an email, text me, whatever, and I'll be happy to respond. Going once, going twice? Okay, awesome. So let me find, hang on, I don't want to share screen yet. Stop that. Let me pull up the PowerPoint presentation for tonight, and now I can do share screen. Sorry, sometimes this is interesting. There it is. Okay, so again, remember, I think I've said this to you guys before. There's something weird with Zoom that if I put this in the actual PowerPoint presentation mode, for some reason it just shuts down. Okay, so any questions so far about feedback, essays? Oh, I did want to tell you on the reflective essays, guys. Make sure, and I think honestly the majority of you did this, so you're fine. Do not forget that the intent of the reflective essay, just like the discussion forum is, it's not to regurgitate or summarize the articles in reading. I've read them, guys. I know what they contain. I don't need you to tell me again. What I want you to do is make connections between what you've read and learned and how you see that or how you've experienced it being applied in real life, okay? So we're trying to work at the higher end of Bloom's taxonomy, where you're synthesizing and analyzing as opposed to just recall, okay? And like I said, the majority of you did fine. A couple of you just kind of struggled a little bit with that. So if you're struggling with it and not sure exactly how to do that, email me and we'll either schedule a phone call or a one-on-one Zoom or whatever we need to do. But like I said, the majority of you did okay, but a couple of you struggled a little bit. Okay, any other questions? Let me look at my notes here, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, going once, going twice. Let's get into tonight's work. So this week we were focusing on the inequities in urban schools and cities. And I kind of changed my mind a little bit about what we were going to talk about this week because a new report came out, and I actually saw today when I was scanning through some news feed that this is actually being reported. I know Fox News had it on today, and a couple of other the networks did too. The new information about income, poverty rates, and stuff like that came out. And it's all collected by the Census Bureau every year. And it's a really good indicator of where we are in terms of the economic, I guess, platform or the economic status of the country. But specifically, I think this is really important for us to know and understand in the context of the urban school and the urban community. You know, a lot of times when we're looking at charting and measuring progress, we need to know what the bigger group, how they're performing, so that we can set those rigorous goals to shoot for. That's certainly part of how you develop strong goal setting and strong objectives. So I have pulled all of that data, so I'm not going to bore you and read this to you. If you've already looked at the PowerPoint tonight, you're fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put each slide up for probably about 2 minutes. And I want you to read them and just kind of absorb those statistics and make note of anything that you think is particularly interesting or important. Because then we're going to talk about it a little bit, and then we're going to go into some real life applications of this information. Okay, so here we go. Maybe. There we go. All right, so let's look at the first set of statistics. And again, I'm not going to read these to you. If you guys will just read those to yourself. And by the way, this is 1 year. So it's from 2018 to 2019. Statistics are always a year behind because obviously they're still in 2020. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. So again, same thing, if you will read those, please. I just realized on the fourth bullet, the poverty rate has decreased. The word from shouldn't be in there. It's decreased 14.8% since 2014. Sorry about that. Okay, next slide, same thing. And I just noticed too, on the last bullet, the median incomes for all regions of the United States, they all increased. And I like that, that's kind of a pretty important word in there. So those are the percentage points that median incomes increase. And remember, median income is like the midpoint. So that means that half the incomes are less than the median income and half of the incomes are higher. Okay, another slide. And the last slide. So when I talk about the supplemental poverty rate, generally when they figure the poverty rate, they don't include any government-sponsored program. So for example, if you're getting Medicaid or Social Security, disability, any government-sponsored programs, they don't include that income when they calculate the poverty index. For the supplemental poverty rate, they include that. So for some people, the fact when you factor in their food stamps, their SNAP benefits, their Social Security, their Medicaid or Medicare, plus whatever other income they may be earning, sometimes that will push them out of that poverty rate threshold for income. Okay, so that's the difference between the regular poverty rate and the supplemental poverty rate. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute so I can see all of you and call on you shamelessly if I need to. So what are your thoughts? What stood out to you guys about these numbers in this data?
Almost 1 in 5 Black African American are still in poverty.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, so many of our Black families and children live in poverty, and they have the highest poverty rate of any one of our groups that they track, for this kind of data. Good point, Stacey. Thank you. What else did you guys notice? And what stood out to you? Yes, I can see your name. Yeah, you'll come on.
Well, I think the fact that there was only one quote unquote disparaging number on that entire slide presentation you gave. And that was the number that the previous student just made reference to, that the poverty rate for Blacks was twice as high as, anything else. And so it's, there's a lot you could read into that. I mean, you can think about how people will focus on only what they want to focus on. I know I'm not trying to be funny or anything, but one of my favorite movies of all times was Boys in the Hood. And at the end of that movie, I didn't think about it then. I was a young kid, hey, Ice Cube, whatever. But the other day I caught the end of it. I was like a couple of weekends ago. And when he said either they don't know or they don't, whatever, what goes on in the hood. And it was a profound statement. Because it's like, it's that way now. It's like there's no way you can say you don't know, because numbers are out there. Just like you said, numbers don't lie. But so then you go into this other level of, so where is the humanity? Where is the care? Where is the concern, the empathy, all of those things that, you really can't measure in people. You just have to draw upon. It's kind of like the guy said in that video that we watched this week. We all have these innate, these stereotypes. We talk about that unintended bias. I don't know if that's the right word, but we all have that in us, and we have to constantly try to think about how we were socialized and our socialization. I think that in itself makes you look at that slide presentation in all kind of different ways. Depending on what your situation is, what your background is, how you grew up, how you were brought up, those numbers can say a lot of things. They were surprising to me, I'm not gonna lie. But at the same time, I'm not gonna be narrow-minded enough to think that, well, that's gotta be wrong. So, but I'm sorry, I took too long.
No, really, you bring up a really great point. And I think one of the biggest challenges that urban schools face is that the majority of teachers that go into the profession are coming from a middle class sort of economic background. Obviously access to college plays into that, all kinds of things. Very few of them have, as a student, when they were going to school, an urban experience. And you'll have the rare person that does, but for the most part, that's not true. So I remember pretty vividly, my daughter is like 5'3". She weighs, soaking wet, 110 pounds. She has long blonde hair. She looks very much like, I don't know, I can say this, I guess, the stereotypical white girl from suburbia. Well, my husband and I made a very conscious choice. Her early elementary school, she went to a very affluent school in the neighborhood where we lived. Well, I was spending all my time in urban schools, and I became increasingly concerned that she was not experiencing different cultures, different races, different ethnicities, different points of view. I didn't want her to grow up with these blinders on because the real world is not what she was experiencing in early elementary school. So we made the conscious choice to move her to an urban school setting where there were kids of every kind that you can imagine. I mean, you know, the richest of the rich to the poorest of the poor and everything in between. And she went to those schools all the way through high school and graduated. So she got a teaching job at a very urban middle school. And again, like I said, if you looked at her stereotypically, you know, the first thing you're going to think is there's no way this little white girl's going to make it. These kids are going to eat her up. Surprisingly, though, because she had that experience growing up in an urban school setting, she got an excellent education. And some of the best teachers I've ever seen in my life. She not only did great in her classroom teaching science, she was the cheerleader sponsor. She was on, you know, the principal, like if he had to walk out of an assembly or the cafeteria, he'd put her in charge because she could instantly get everybody to settle down. Probably being around a principal, you know, her whole life didn't hurt. But I mean, the kids adored her. She adored them. She could relate to them. The parents, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you, they just literally adored her. When other teachers would have problems with kids in their class, they'd go get my daughter. So as we think about this data and statistics, I think Willie brings up such a critical point. On my background, I'm still totally just frustrated that the Black poverty rate is still where it is. We've been working on poverty, guys, since the 60s. Why have we not made more progress? And when we're putting teachers into those urban environments, we have to be so careful that we put teachers in there that the students can relate to. Because one of the biggest issues we see in urban education is that the students do not trust or believe that their teachers and others in their schools really care about them. That is the most critical factor, guys. Relationships, relationships, relationships. Thank you, Willie. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent too. Anybody else?
Dr. Johnson, one last quick thing.
Yeah,
Everybody, everybody on that note, if you haven't heard of William Daggett, he has the 3 R's: rigor, relevance, and relationships. And he has this 4-quadrant setting, and he's trying to get people to teach in a certain quadrant. And you got to have your rigor and the relevance. We always talk about that, but like Dr. Johnson said, we don't talk about that relationship piece. And that's really important, especially at urban schools. Right.
You're right, Willie. Thank you. William Daggett happens to be one of my very favorite researchers. I've gone to practically every one of his conferences. He's amazing. But yeah, like I said, relationships matter with all kids, but it is the most critical factor in an urban school because the students don't trust the system and they don't trust us as adults of authority. So we absolutely have to find ways to build relationships with the kids. Anybody else want to add anything before we kind of move on? Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing just for the sake of time. Hang on. Let me get back to our little PowerPoint here. Okay, so you guys know I am from, well, there we go. I am from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I grew up in, Plano, but I grew up on the poor side of Plano. People don't think that exists, but I can show it to you. We were not an affluent family. I didn't live in a mansion. We lived in our little Fox and Jacobs cracked home, and we're happy. Had a great life, great parents. But in Dallas, if you're familiar with the Dallas area or you've ever been there, you may have heard of this place called Highland Park. Highland Park is an extremely affluent enclave city that literally sits in the middle of Dallas. A lot of people refer to it as the bubble. So Highland Park is only about 1/100th of the size of the city of Dallas. Their entire population is only, and this is recent as of like yesterday, 9,083 people. They are growing at a 6.1% rate. That's not huge when you have 9,000 people. Their median household income, so remember that poverty income index was $26,000 and some change. The median household income in Highland Park is $200,208. 26% of their population is under the age of 18. They are 94.3%, 0.3% Black, 3.3% Asian, and 3.8% Hispanic. If that doesn't add up to 100, it's because there are a small number of people who do not, who have multi-race, and that's not reported. Their languages other than English is 7.3%, and their poverty rate is a whopping 2.7%. I began my teaching career fresh out of college in Highland Park. I only lasted 3 years. I absolutely hated it. I felt like all I ever did was deal with the nannies. And so I think it's funny that their languages other than English is 7.3% because there are a lot of people who speak French, a lot of people who speak German. It is not the English language learners that we typically think about when we talk about language. Now let's contrast Highland Park, the city, to Dallas, Texas, the big D. So Dallas is the urban center. They have multiple rings of subways. And for someone who moved to the Dallas area in 1973 when my dad retired from the Air Force, the outer ring included basically Richardson Garland, Duncanville, I'm trying to think, Mesquite, I'm trying to think on the west. There really wasn't anything on the west. Now it expands literally about 45 to 50 miles from the downtown center. So, you're talking all the way up towards the north, Salina and Prosper, to the south, down around Red Oak, to the east. They're past Forney now, almost to Tyler. And then to the west, you've got Irving, Grand Prairie, Arlington. I mean, it's all just one big conglomerate. The population is 1.3 million. Dallas is growing at a 12.2% rate. The median household income is $50,100. A little bit less than Highland Park, but about twice the poverty income. 25.4% of the population is under 18. The race, 62.5%, 24.3% Black, 3.4% Asian, Hispanic, 41.7%. The Hispanic population is growing the most quickly in Dallas, and actually the Black and white population is decreasing. So if you were to compare this to 10 years ago, you will see a pretty dramatic change in those numbers. 43.8%, or almost half the people in Dallas, speak a language other than English, and the poverty rate across the city is 20.5%. But let's get even more specific. So let's look at the Dallas ISD versus the Highland Park ISD. Texas has a letter grade rating system. The Dallas schools received a B rating, which is pretty dang good for an urban school district. Highland Park received an A, as they should have. I've said many times, if there's a single child in Highland Park that failed the graduation exam, the superintendent and every teacher in that entire district should be fired because these kids come to school with every possible advantage. Dallas has 155,000 students. That is actually down pretty significantly. When I left the district, we were sitting at about, which was in 2016, we were sitting at about 163,000. So Dallas's numbers are declining. Highland Park has a grand total of 862 students. I had more students in my elementary school as a principal than Highland Park has in the entire district. The average teacher experience is 9.9 years. In Dallas, it's 11.6 in Highland Park. You can look at the graduation rates, but I think this is interesting. The average teacher salary in Dallas is $58,012. Highland Park, it's only $52,015. If you can teach in Highland Park, you're right there by Dallas. So, it's a $6,000 difference between salaries. The average SAT score in Dallas is 929. You can see what it is in Highland Park. The dropout rate in Dallas is 2.9%. Interestingly enough, this is where the two districts are actually pretty close. The dropout rate in Highland Park is 2%. The Dallas teacher salary is actually almost $4,000 more than the state average, and the teacher salary in Highland Park is actually $2,000 less than the Texas state average. So what conclusions would you draw from this? And again, I can see y'all, I will call in shamelessly. I'm really good at waiting.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I would say that those teachers that teach in Highland Park are there because, you know, they're comfortable there. They're not there for the money per se, but they're there because they, you know, evidently they like the environment. They, like what's going on there. And so it's not about the money for them. They just want to be there for the children. And it reminds me of, I'm in Houston, and it reminds me of a lot of our private Christian schools. I had my son in, and the teachers there made significantly less than those in the public school districts. And so it was because, you know, they just wanted to teach a certain type of student, and it wasn't about, you know, the income for them. And so that's what I've noticed. That's what I take from that PowerPoint.
Yeah, excellent point. Some would say that the students in Highland Park are easier to teach because, you know, they enter kindergarten knowing their alphabet and how to count and how to write their names, most of them how to read. That's not generally the case in an urban school. Others would say too that the perks that you get in Highland Park from having very wealthy families make it worth it. I know when I taught in Highland Park for the short time that I did, I was getting married during that time. The gifts that I got from the parents were like unbelievable. I mean, seriously, totally useless. You know, I said to China and stuff. I'm just like, seriously, um, uh, so there is that. The other thing in Highland Park, when a child struggles, the parent is supposed to fix it. How do they fix it? They find a tutor. I used to do freelance tutoring in Dallas, and a lot of my clients were in Highland Park. They paid me $150 an hour, sometimes just to sit with their child and make sure they did their homework. Seriously. Because I wasn't going to do it for them. I would help them if they got stuck. But I'm not kidding you. Literally, just to make sure they did their homework. So it's a very different kind of environment. If you've never taught in an uber affluent, school, it's probably a little bit hard to understand. Teachers absolutely want for nothing for their classrooms, literally nothing. Okay. Other thoughts or ideas before we head back to the PowerPoint, because I do want to get to some of this earlier, and we are like, oh my gosh, we're out of time.
I wanted to say, she said it like, I don't disagree with her, but she said it that they're there for the kids, but I don't think that's exactly right, because that makes it sound like altruistic, and it's really not. They're not there because they feel like those kids need them the most. They're there because those kids are easier. Because I worked at that district like you, where the parents, if the kids were struggling, they went and hired tutors so the kids did better. And they're an A district in the state, but it's because half the parents hire tutors after school. So
No, you're
And I agree. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I agree that it is, you know, they do see it as easier. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, and there are, don't get me wrong, just like in any system, there's great teachers who are there for altruistic reasons. But I think the majority of them, if you took that, and I've said this a lot of times, some of the absolute phenomenal best teachers I've ever seen teach in some of the most challenging, difficult schools you can imagine. If I were to take that same teacher and put them in Highland Park, and take the teacher from Highland Park and swap them, like wife swap, we could do teacher swap. That outstanding teacher from the urban school district is going to do great in Highland Park, but that teacher in Highland Park is probably going to crater and fail in the urban school district because they don't have the skill set. They don't have to be great teachers. I used to say, when I was there, it's probably why I left, because I wasn't the most popular person. I used to say that the kids in Highland Park learned in spite of us as teachers, not because of us, in spite of us. In fact, for those of you that may be familiar with the Dallas area, there's something called the Fusion Academy, which is where a lot of what I call the expats from Highland Park end up putting their kids. It is a school where students have one-on-one teachers. I mean, can you imagine the cost? So if I'm a high school student, I have my English teacher that teaches me one-on-one. Then I go to my history teacher that teaches me one-on-one. Because so many of the kids, particularly those that have learning differences, maybe some mental health issues, whatever, they don't make it in Highland Park. And that's sort of it's a very sad testimony, I guess, to what can happen sometimes to kids. So just because a school has an A rating and maybe another school has a C rating, unless you dig in and really compare the two apples to apples and not apples to oranges, we don't really know. So I'm a huge advocate that when we're looking at success in urban schools, we use a growth model as opposed to an absolute model. An absolute model is here's the standard and you either meet it or you don't. A growth index model looks at where the students started and how far they grew over the course of a year. And when you apply, I have a friend who's a researcher who does all this stuff just for fun. When he did a comparison of Highland Park High School, and when I was principal at MacArthur High School, I asked him to do this, and he applied the growth index model. Even though Highland Park was outperforming us in every measure, as they should have, we were growing our kids in an average of almost 3 years. Highland Park was actually decreasing the students' growth. They weren't even getting a full year's academic growth. They were kind of dumbing everybody down there. So, important stuff. Okay, guys, I am so sorry. It is 7 o'clock. Obviously, I'm very passionate about this information. So what I'm going to do next week is we're going to talk about, because I want you to see specifically some information about some mindset things and then
Dr.
how some of
Johnson.
these principles can be applied. But before I close out tonight, you guys have any questions, comments, anything like that for the good of the group before I end our meeting?
Dr. Johnson, one last thing.
Sure.
On those numbers from Highland Park, if you could go back to that. Oh, well, never mind.
So that's okay.
I keep looking at the fact that the teachers make less money. And I used to live in Rowlett, so I'm familiar with I'm familiar with the bubble. If you want to talk about branding, there's no one that does it better than Highland Park. But I was thinking about, is that lower salary, could that be a sign that maybe they don't value the teachers? Maybe as a community, they've reached such a massive amount of wealth and things they don't have to struggle with and everything. And guess what? A lot of them have reached those levels in spite of maybe what they did in school. And so they may not see it as important to put, because you would think that, I used to think all the time when I lived in Dallas, I mean, dog, if you work in Highland Park, you probably make $100,000 a year. But then I begin to think and look at it and you see it's not. So I always wonder, well, how do they even value, or how do they look at their teachers? I mean, just as a community, just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think a part of it is competitiveness for teachers. Dallas ISD will hire, on average, in a good year, 1,500 teachers. Most years, 2,500 to 3,000 teachers. And every single year, I think there was maybe 1 year, we worked our butts off. We actually opened school with no vacancies. It was the first time, I think, like ever. We always have a need for teachers in Dallas. So Dallas realized pretty quickly it's not an easy place to teach. There's not unlimited vast amounts of resources. You have to have a unique skill set. And so one of the ways they have tackled that has been to increase salary. Now, the untold secret in Dallas is you're going to start out pretty good in Dallas ISD, like way ahead of every other school district as a starting teacher. But then as you think about the salary trajectory, instead of it going continually up in increments, what it does in Dallas is it'll go up, I think, like the first 5 to 8 years. then mid-career teachers, those have been there, you know, the ones you really want to keep because they're not new anymore, they're experienced, they get the most bang out of your butt kind of thing, the salary schedule levels off. And other districts will actually come and meet that level. In Highland Park, they don't have to worry about finding teachers. You know, for every job vacancy they have, they'll have 200 applicants. Whereas in Dallas, we're like, ooh, we have 3 people that applied. We can actually choose somebody as opposed to you're a warm, I mean, I hate to say this, but as a principal, there were times I'm like, you're a warm body, you don't have a criminal record, and I can get rid of you at the end of the year if I have to, because you're on a probationary contract. I'm going to hire you. So I think Highland Park can get away with paying less because of that competitive sort of, and there is a mindset, like we talked about, it's easier to teach in Highland Park than it is Dallas. And that is a true statement. It is easier in some ways. Have you ever dealt with really rich, affluent parents though? That's very, very, very hard to deal with. Because in Dallas, the parents don't show up, or, you know, I'm stereotyping. We have some great, you know what I mean. In Highland Park, it's like, why did my child make a B? My child deserves an A. You're going to give them an A. I mean, just stuff like that. So they both have their challenges. Oh, Emily, that's interesting. I did not know that about the Pittsburgh Public Schools. That says a lot about the culture they've created. So if you're not reading the chat, you may want to see what I'm posting.
So it's interesting. I don't think it's so much about the culture of Pittsburgh Public Schools, but I think it's about Pennsylvania's teacher retirement system.
Okay.
And so, like, from my understanding, there are many, many teachers who are still teaching in Pittsburgh Public, which is, I mean, by far, like, the largest school district in the area, obviously, who probably should be gone, but are choosing not to leave. And it makes it hard because, I mean, like, I recently applied several times for Pittsburgh Public in their early childhood and can't get hired with most of my master's degree in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. And I will tell you too, a phenomenon, and I'm going to try not to make a political statement because I don't think that's my role, but if you're familiar with Teach for America, which goes out and, you know, hires Harvard grads and stuff like that to be teachers. Dallas ISD really bought into that hook, line, and sinker. So we're hiring all of these people who, and again, I'm stereotyping. There's some great teachers out there, but we also got some who, you know, I mean, they had no more business in an urban school than, you know, I would have, I don't know, trying to ice skate backwards on one foot. You know, it's just not a good thing. And what started happening is we get those teachers from TFA and they do their 3-year commitment and then they were experienced and then they'd leave and go to Highland Park or they'd leave and go to Southlake or, you know, one of the other districts. So there's so many dynamics when we talk about teachers and retention and the skill sets that we need in the urban schools. I mean, it's not an easy solution. But you guys are going to figure all that out. So there's hope for the future. Because some of us have done the work and we're tired. Okay, anything else? I've kept you guys 6 minutes. I am so sorry. Great comments tonight, though. I appreciate you guys' input. Okay, and Stacey has emailed me an article. I will post that in the weekly resources for you guys too, from the Atlantic, about the racial wealth. Yeah. All right, guys, anybody else? Going once, going twice? Y'all have a great week, a fabulous weekend, and we will see you same time next week. I'm going to go ahead and end. Y'all have a great night. Bye.